Welcome to the AfterWord, a
Thank you.
production of the Town Church and sponsored by... Who's our sponsor this week?
Let's
We have to be careful, though, because I think we can get in trouble if we name like a well-known business.
Yeah, but no one's
Avocados.
listening.
Avocados?
Sponsored
In
by
general.
Thank you,
from
avocados.
Mexico.
Yes.
Oh, but I don't think you can add Mexico.
Avocados from...
Yeah, that's right. Generic avocado. Okay. This is a podcast where we want to delve more into the passage that was just preached. There's lots of layers. We want to see God's glory in it. We're processing here. And so I should say this as well. The views represented by those in here are not necessarily the views of the Town Church proper. Like we're working through this, a lot of these things as well, with our listener. And so because I say something does not necessarily mean that Vince would say the same thing.
In fact,
or would you say
often.
every time it is the same thing?
I mean, the way I look at it is this is like a township discussion.
Yeah.
We're sitting around and recording a township discussion.
Yeah. And so sometimes I can be really vulnerable.
And sometimes you could just be dead wrong.
Yeah, but that doesn't happen very often.
Okay.
I want to ask, I'm joined by Betty and Kirsten, Vince. I'm Eric. Here's our intro question this week to get to know each other a little bit better. When you were in elementary school and you had recess, what was a favorite activity you could be found doing?
I had a really vivid memory come to mind whenever you asked this earlier. And we had, our school had a big gate all the way, or fence all the way around it, 6-foot fence. And there were honeysuckle flowers that grew, at least do they grow in the spring, fall? I don't know when honeysuckles grow. But we used to go, my friends and I used to go and like pull the little middle out and eat the honeysuckle juice.
It was tasty, huh?
It was. People would probably shame me for not knowing the names of the flower, but
The juicy part?
the juicy part of the flower. So that's what I remember doing. Outside of that, I have a memory by a monkey bar, and that's about it.
You're a honeysuckle sucker.
Yep, that was me.
Okay. What about you, Betty?
It depends on the era of elementary school.
Okay.
In the early days, I remember while everyone else went and did stuff, I had this one friend and we'd play house, but we would call it home. And we would just like play under the playground equipment. And I would always be the mom and she would always be the baby. And we did that for a while. And then Groundies became cool and everyone played Groundies.
Wait, Groundies? What's that?
It's just a game that you're basically playing tag on the play set, but the person who's it has to have their eyes closed when they're on it, which could be very dangerous.
Oh.
And then you can go on the ground. But if you're on the play set and you hear someone run on the ground, you can call Groundies, and then they are it.
Oh, so the idea is you're up on play structures the whole time.
Everyone is, but then the person who's it comes up, but they have to have their eyes closed. But if they hear someone running on the ground.
Wait, they're on the play structures with their eyes closed?
Yes.
It's
Walk
like
off the
sharks.
edge.
It's like sharks and minnows on a playground. Because
Okay.
like sharks and minnows, you have your back turned, and then you hear someone swimming, and then you turn around and catch them real quick.
I like how we're describing a child's game with another child's game to help Eric understand what we're talking about.
I still don't get it.
He doesn't know what sharks and minnows is
We
either.
played that, but we never turned our backs. I don't think. It just one person was a shark and everybody else ran away. I think.
But no, it was
Right?
in the water.
Tag.
All right, Vince, what were you getting into during recess?
Tetherball.
You were not.
Yeah.
Were you?
Yeah. No one can beat me.
Him and Napoleon.
No, to this day, no one. I will challenge anyone who wants to play. No one will beat me.
Okay, so I want you. Do you still have that in your backyard?
Yep. Come
I
on.
want our listener to
Yeah.
challenge you, and we should put a prize
No one's
associated with
ever
it.
beat me.
How about Will Moore will build them some cabinets for free if they can beat you in tetherball?
Done.
An
Thank you, Will
avocado
Moore.
cabinet. A couple of years ago, I was playing with Asher, and he just walloped it, and it smacked me in the face. And since then, I'm like,
You're
I'm
done?
not playing tetherball anymore.
How about you, Eric?
I don't know. I mean, we played football. I barely knew the rules. I didn't understand how you could get a
Well, it's
field
like sharks
goal.
and minnows.
Yeah.
Football is.
Turn your back and
Jump off a playset blindfolded.
I do remember playing football, and it was the classic. You pick teams at the beginning, which is a horrible.
How often were you chosen?
Yeah.
Was lanky.
That's why I just played home.
I'm a lineman. They put me on the line. I actually played lineman.
You were the line. You just laid
Yeah,
down.
that's right. You can't cross me. All right.
Wait, I'm going. Why did you call it home?
I have no idea. I think it was my friend's idea.
Not house.
Sure, blame it on someone else.
Well, I guess it wasn't a house,
Yeah,
right?
it was
But
home.
it was your home.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you hang your hat there? Because home is where you hang your heart.
Okay,
Yep.
let's just
Okay.
move to this summary.
All right, Vince, give us a recap from yesterday.
All right. David is on the run from Saul. He knows that Saul's out to get him, and so David runs and hides in a cave. We're told that 400 people, including David's family, run to be with him to seek asylum. And Saul hears about this and brings in the priests and says to the priest, he begins to accuse them of helping David by giving the sword of Goliath and bread. All of the priests come, and when Saul hears it in his insecurity, demands their lives and asks his servants to kill them. And they say no, so Doeg is the one who comes in and kills 85 priests and goes on to kill families included. And so David is hiding. The prophet tells David, you need to get out of here. And so he takes off away from this cave and hides in a different area near Keilah. And Saul finds out about that, comes toward Keilah, and David begins to ask God for help in lots of ways, asking him questions. What we would say is praying. I'm not completely sure. We're not really told how David is approaching God, but there's some conversation, or at least some communication back and forth between David and God, where he's seeking help. Saul hears about it, pursues David even further. And right in the middle of this pursuit of David, Saul catches wind that the Philistines are now back plundering their land. And so Saul is diverted from seeking after David and goes back to help his people. The end.
And you had 3 main points yesterday.
Let me see if I can remember what they were. The Lord's leader is protected. Yeah, the Lord protects his leader. The Lord keeps his promises through a leader. And the reason I said a leader there is because it's Saul who he keeps the promise through. And so it's not the leader. It's not his leader. It's a leader. And then the final one was the Lord directs his leader, guides his leader through his word, through people, through Jonathan, and through his plan.
So there's a lot of mess in these chapters too. It seems like
Yep.
1 Samuel is filled with mess, and that God being over all of them. I have some questions, just interesting things from your study.
Yeah.
That we'll start there, and then maybe we can get into some of these messier things. The first one is this. You mentioned to me earlier today something very interesting about David taking his family to be with him.
Yeah. So David's family comes to the cave to be with them, and David, in an effort to protect his parents, take his parents to Moab, which I wasn't sure how to insert this in, but now's a good time. Moab, if you remember, if you trace David's line back, he is the grandson of Ruth and Boaz. Ruth is from Moab. They had a son named Obed. Obed had a son named Jesse. Jesse is David's dad. And so some people think that David is taking his parents back to their homeland as a place of safety for them. So interesting tidbit there.
Yeah, with the Bible informing the Bible, like all these layers. We saw that with Brock too. And tell me about these Psalms. There were 3, is that right? Came out of this time?
Yeah, Psalm 57, Psalm 142, and 54, I think. And all of the inscriptions of these Psalms. So the inscription, what I mean by that is the small words right under or right before the Psalm are inscriptions that have been found in manuscripts. So the inscriptions may not be inspired by God. They may have been inserted by a scribe later, but it does give reference to where they believe these Psalms have been written. And so each of those Psalms are written in these moments. So 2 in the cave where David is hiding, and 1 where the Ziphites give David up, give him away to Saul. I think it's fascinating to put these things together and read 1st and 2nd Samuel with the Psalms in mind, because not only do you get the events, the details, the sort of head knowledge about what's going on, but you also get the heart level information about what David is feeling, sensing.
And is there a common theme of David's heart in those 3 Psalms?
It's trust.
Right.
I mean, it's a trust in God. There's some there's lines that are really familiar in some of these Psalms, that he hides in the shadow of his wings. He's seeking shelter there. There's some language about God protecting him from his enemy, but it's a trust in God, and also a praise of who God is for doing that
while he's running for his life.
Yep.
All right, I want to ask about this ephod. This is chapter 23. The text mentions the ephod twice. David, in verse 9 of chapter 3, chapter 23, verse 9, he tells, how do you pronounce this priest's name? Abiathar. He says, bring the ephod here, and then we have David praying. Okay, so what's the significance of the ephod here?
Yeah, so the ephod was used with this was the way they used it. The priest would have the Urim and Thummim, the dice, for lack of a better word, the dice that they would roll in an effort to communicate or hear from God. So it was a priestly duty to have that, and so the ephod carried that weight with it. And so when David asks the priest to bring the ephod to him, it's in an effort to have this communication with God, to go back and forth with God to do that.
I want to touch on something else, and we'll start asking some more general questions. At the beginning of chapter 2, David's on the run.
22 is what he means.
What did I say?
Friends, 2.
Yeah, we're way past that. Okay,
Yep.
Chapter 22, thank you. David attracts to himself a group of people. And when I first read this before you had preached it, I thought this was very, very negative. Starting in verse 2, it says, and everyone who was in distress, everyone who was in debt, and everyone who was bitter in soul gathered to him being David. And David became commander over them, and they were with him about 400 men. And when I first read that, I thought, oh, great, all the disgruntled are going to David. All those who are upset, maybe have some sort of chip on their shoulder, those are the ones that are going to David. Doesn't seem like a group that I want. Yet, your interpretation was very different.
Yeah, it's kind of like what you're considering is kind of like the early days of a church plant. We've been a part of assessing a lot of church planters, and early on in church plants often attract people who are disgruntled about their previous church, and so they come and try to shape the way this church is going to go. So that's a way to read it. I don't see it that way, based on some of the reading, and also based on the fact that his parents were a part of that group, his family, his brothers and his parents are a part of that group. But a lot of the things that are listed, so those who were in distress, many think that they were in distress because they were a part of David's entourage, and Saul was also after them. So they were in distress in that way. They were in debt. Either they were unable to pay taxes or unable to offer up money because of Saul. So it was all in oppression from Saul is how some would read it. And then bitter in soul can have this meaning of like discontent or feeling
disgruntled,
discouraged, not disgruntled. You're trying to insert your way of thinking about it. And all these people come to him because they have nowhere else to go. They need a people. They need a group to be with around them. So
there's a lot of people in a similar station in life gathering together.
Along with David. I mean, David is one of those guys.
Yeah. Here's a question that we had submitted by our listener. The question is this. This person is curious about God's promise to Eli of cutting off the priesthood, something you mentioned yesterday, Vince. Yet, how do you pronounce that again?
Abiathar.
I always grew up
however you want.
I always grew up saying it something different.
Say it.
Abiathar? Should we vote on it?
Yeah, let's vote. What do you think?
I just call him Abe.
Okay.
Maybe his first name's Abby and his last name's Thar.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Okay.
Abiathar survives, who was a part of Eli's line, and seems to be serving in the manner for David after his family is killed by Doeg. So can you talk about that a little bit? God's promise to cut off the priesthood. Eli's family, yet Abiathar still survives.
Yeah, so I don't want to give it all away. I want people to stick around for later.
You could just say that. Stay tuned.
Yeah, stay tuned. Abiathar is removed later.
Okay.
When Solomon is king, he through some conflict that he gets in, he is removed from the priesthood, and the line of priests change. It shifts to a different family line. So God's still keeping his promise.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So that was the quick hits. Should we call them that? Quick hits?
Ooh.
No, I don't like that.
A new little...
No, I don't like it. We can't make that happen. All right. I want to ask...
Today's quick hits are brought to you
no,
by
that's
Homework.
what I don't like.
Okay.
They have to call it something else or just not call it something. I'm going to keep moving.
Speedy slaps.
No, I don't like that any worse. I'm going to ask an application question to start. One of the application points that you pointed out from this text yesterday, Vince, was that David sought God often, and David waited for God to actually answer, rather than praying something and then either expecting an answer right away or just moving anyway in the direction you wanted to go. So the point was, the emphasis was on waiting to actually hear from God on what we're praying.
Yeah.
So one question I want to ask of us four, if you're willing to share, is there anything that you are currently praying about that you feel like you're in a waiting period right now, waiting for God to answer? You don't know what he's going to answer, but you're in that kind of that middle spot.
I'm praying about finding a job. When Ezra relapsed, I quit my job, and it's been a real mercy to be home for a year and a half and not have to work. But we're watching our savings dribble away, and so just praying that God would open up something for me. But my margin and my capacity is real small, and so I don't know what that's going to be, but I'm praying and waiting.
And asking God, what would you have for me? And just listening.
Yep.
Yeah. I'd love to hear answers to the question, so I'm not trying to divert from that. But I'll add to it. Why do you think we don't do that more than we do?
Don't do what?
Ask. Just ask God questions and
wait?
Yeah, and just wait.
I don't like to wait.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't. Do you have something, Eddie?
Well, I was just going to say, to answer your question, I like to feel competent and like that I can do things on my own. And there are things that sometimes are seemingly small. And it's like, I'm not going to wait and listen because I think I should be able to do that on my own, which isn't true.
Yeah, I think there are probably... Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think sometimes too, the way that God responds and the timing that he responds in doesn't feel...
Yeah.
It doesn't feel comfortable. And so even just thinking about the fact that God promised that he would wipe out Eli's line, and yet this is years later that he's wiping out Ahimelech and some of those guys, but Abiathar is still alive. And so that's going to be another couple years or several years before he does that. And so I think we, especially here in the West, have this idea that we should pray, and then there's like this desire for instant gratification of we ask God for something and he gives it right away or, in a timely manner. But that's not how God works. I mean, his word says that, a day is like 1,000 years and 1,000 years is like a day. So things that seem long to us are actually really short because they're part of God's timing.
Yeah, I think as I hear you all and think through it myself, I think there are a couple of reasons. One is that the timing of it. I think another reason for me that I don't ask God questions and wait is because I'm not exactly sure sometimes if what I'm hearing is from God. And so it brings some confusion to me of like, well, was that from God? Or how do I know when it is from God? How do I know when I'm asking, did I get the right response? I had someone come up yesterday right after the gathering and say, so how did you know you were supposed to buy the truck? And I said, that's a great question. And for us, Kirsten especially, she has often leaned on what feels like a peace from God, this sense of peace. And she's had times where she has not felt a sense of peace and not moved forward towards something because of that, and that's been affirmed. So I think that's a piece of it for me is we ask God questions, but did he answer? Or how do we know it was him? How do we know it wasn't? How do I know that I didn't just project out there what I wanted anyway? And say, yeah, I heard from God because of this. And then we fill in the blanks of what we want. So I think it's a hard thing to do, but I think it's a practice that may lend us, it may move us toward a deeper trust in God, to wait.
And I think sometimes there's not always like a yes, this is the way, walk in it, and no, don't do. Like there's not always a clear answer. And so sometimes my approach is to pray and just say, Lord, I want what you want. I want to desire what you want. I don't know what that is. So here's what I'm planning on doing. I'm planning on moving in this direction. If that's not what you would have, would you make it clear to me? Would you like shut doors or just help me to be discerning, to know that I'm not doing the thing that you would have me do? And again, just walking in surrender and knowing that God could shut it down and he may not. And sometimes there's no clear answer, but at least starting out with the conversation of, God, this is what I'm feeling. This is what I'm looking to do. Is this from you?
Yeah. I find it interesting here that David asks, I didn't count however many questions he asks of God. And he doesn't actually get answers that are helpful for him. Is Saul going to come after me? Yes, he is. Are these people going to give me up and rat me out, just Saul? Yep, they are. So I think when I read this, I think it seems as if he's asking and the response is going to be, no, David, I've got you. I'm gonna protect you. But it's the opposite. So for me, I think I ask God questions at times or seek God's wisdom in hope that he's going to make something easy. And we don't ever want, no, this is how it's going to go and it's going to be hard. So.
Yeah, I think an additional reason why it's hard for me to wait is that sometimes I feel irresponsible in the waiting period. And maybe I shouldn't be waiting. I should actually be doing something, or maybe God's already given me the tools and the skills and the people and the resources, so I just need to move. I think those at times are pressures I feel not to wait. And so I think this is my next question. How do you wait? Hey, if you're praying about something, are there things that you find helpful to help you wait in this might sound weird, but like in a responsible sort of way? You know what I mean? So last couple of weeks ago, we talked about two ditches you can fall in, too passive or trying to take control of yourself. How do you not fall in those ditches when you're praying and waiting?
Well, I think wisdom comes into it. And by the way, I don't think any of us are saying we should be irresponsible. We should just say, well, I asked God 4.5 years ago if I should pay my taxes, and I didn't hear from him, so I just am waiting. There's a responsibility, there's a wisdom, all of that comes into play. So yes, I think the waiting, it comes in for me in times of new things, like, God, what would you have for me in this? Where there's not a time crunch, there's not an irresponsibility, but it's some new vision that I have for something that could be out there. How would you direct me, God? I really want to know. So it does take some forethought to begin asking God questions in advance of what you are wanting. So way out there, God, what would you have here? How would you direct me? And then it's a waiting and listening. But I don't think what we can do is say, so I'm going to sit here passively and not do anything and just wait. I think we search his word for his truth. We have other people around us who are there to encourage us and challenge us. We have the Spirit, so we're leaning on all of those things. It's not just a passive sitting on our couch waiting, but there's some activity there too. Would that help your desire to be responsible, that you're also doing?
Yeah, give me the list of things that do.
Yeah.
Betty, Kirsten, have you found things that have been helpful as you listen and wait?
For me, I continue to pray about it. I continue to ask the Lord and keep praying until I find an answer. If we go back to the example of like looking for a job, like I'm praying about it. I've submitted a few applications here or there when something seems like, oh, this could be something I might be able to do. and then, receive a no. I'm like, okay, Lord, thanks. That's not what you have. And so it's an active waiting. It's not just a passive. You hear stories about people that like desperately want to be married, but they just sit at home and are just waiting for, Mr. Right to show up at their doorstep or something. And that's probably not going to happen. And so there is a degree of like putting out feelers and putting yourself out there and just asking the Spirit to guide and trying. And when doors shut, you're like, okay, Lord, that's not the direction. And then just continuing to actively wait.
I think this is very similar to what we ended up talking about the other week. But I remember sharing that I feel like I'm in a season where I don't know what it is that I'm waiting for. And I think what that looks like right now is just to remain faithful in where I'm at right now. And I know you were talking about that too the other week, but I think that's something that's big for me, is just how do I remain faithful to where I'm at now and not get caught up in the impatience or in the waiting, but recognize the roles that I'm in and the positions that I'm in and just remaining there well and investing deeply there. For now, it might not be where I'm at forever, but just good investment in where I'm at.
Kirsten, before we started recording, you made a comment that sometimes when God answers our prayers, it entails hardship for other people. First of all, give your rationale in the story where you saw that.
Sure. When our son Ezra was
in this
story,
actually both. If you don't mind sharing both from the story and also your personal experience.
When our son Ezra was diagnosed with cancer, I just began praying that the Lord would bring a friend that would stick closer than a brother. And he had some friends, but high school, often there's a lot of drama. And some of those friends kind of fell to the wayside. And so I was just pleading with the Lord that he would bring somebody for Ezra that would just be a sweet friend for him. And God answered that prayer. And it was someone that was in Ezra's friend group, but they just became just best of friends. And it happened really quickly, and it happened in the last year of Ezra's life. And then when we lost Ezra, this friend faced much deeper grief. So he was an answer to my prayer, and yet at the same time, God answered that prayer. And because of that, this friend of Ezra suffered a lot more deeply than he would have had he been kind of on the outside. So I've thought through that and wrestled with that, and just thinking sometimes an answer to prayer also means that somebody else suffers. And what stood out to me in the passage this week was that when David was running from Saul, and the messenger came to Saul and said, "Hurry and come, for the Philistines have made a raid against the land." And just thinking about the fact that God saved David from Saul's hand by allowing the Philistines to attack his own people. And so the Israelites ended up suffering under attack, and not saying any of it's outside of God's plan or God's will, but the Israelites ended up suffering under attack in order that God might save David.
Yes, I think that's fascinating. That God is sovereign over all of it, and it often entails suffering, difficulty. We see him using evil in these two chapters to continue to further his plan. There's some mystery there for me how all that works out. But I think what it does for me is it forces me to hold things even with more of an open hand and maybe adjust my expectations a little bit on what I think God should do. It enlarges God maybe, or expands my view. I don't always want that expanded in these ways, but I think it does.
Yeah, and I think right in the middle, I think something we haven't talked about yet, right in the middle of that while David's waiting, there's this insert, just a few verses of Jonathan, his friend, coming out to build him up, to encourage him, to stand by him, which is extremely valuable in those moments of waiting, to see what God's going to do, of waiting to see how God is going to protect, or if that's going to happen, that Jonathan would come out and stand by David. That was something that hit me as I prepared, and even as I walked through the passage yesterday, that it's extremely valuable for each of us to have people in our lives who are willing to come to where we are and be with us and speak encouragement and God's promises and challenge over us.
And we had that when we lost Ezra. We just left town because we didn't know what else to do, and went up to Breckenridge, and a couple friends came up to Breckenridge and just sat with us and prayed with us and cried with us. And so, that as you were preaching yesterday, Vince, that was something that really came to mind, is like we had those people that were willing to just join us in our grief and go way out of their way, like take a day off work and just be there with us.
What a contrast here in this story of Jonathan with both the city of Keilah and then the Ziphites, two people groups who are going to betray him and give him up. And then in between those two people groups, you have Jonathan, who is still faithful, is still loyal, is still encouraging David. What a kindness from God to David.
Yeah, and Jonathan is the son of Saul, the very one who the Ziphites and the people from Keilah would give him up to.
Yeah.
We need that. I think that would be my encouragement. I said this yesterday on Sunday, but be my encouragement to each of us is who do we have in our lives, or have we so positioned our lives that we are untouchable, that people either don't want to come near us or won't, or we haven't invited that in, that we have this mentality of I've got this, I don't need people in my life.
Do any of you wrestle with that? This independence, I don't want to invite people in.
No, none of us do. Next question.
Good.
Yeah.
Is that something that seems to be front burner for you, or something you're growing in, or not really a particular struggle for you? Could you phrase what that question might be better? This question I'm trying to get at. I think maybe the way I would say it is, do each of us have that person? And if not, why not? Like, what is it that keeps us from having that? And I'll answer that question if that's where you were going. Great
I think
question.
I want it. I don't know that I've experienced that a whole lot. I would say aside from Kirsten. So I think that seems natural that a spouse would be that, but I desire that. I don't know that I've seen it a whole lot. So I have a hard time recognizing what it would be. And also, I think there's always this fear is maybe not the right word, this concern that they not only would they bring encouragement and a reminder of God's promises, but they may also bring some hard conversations to me that I don't really want. So the less I can have those kinds of people in my life, the better. I mean, just to speak honestly, I think that's always a tension for me that I feel.
I think too, on the flip side, that to pray about whether or not maybe God is calling you to be that person in someone else's life, because often the person's not going to invite you in. But if you're feeling led to that, if you're feeling drawn to that, if you're feeling like the Spirit saying, like prompting you in that direction, I think sometimes we don't need to wait for an invitation other than an invitation from God to go be that for someone else. And so, it's not always just that we need to invite someone in, but maybe we need to pray that God would cause someone to invite themselves into our lives in that role.
Yeah, and I think, again, this is just a description, so it's not a prescription. This isn't a command from Scripture, but I think a couple things we see from Jonathan is Jonathan went to where David was. So he went to the place, and we could allegorize this and say, he went near David and suffered with him or whatever that was, but he made a point to go. He didn't say, well, I don't know, maybe next time I see David, if something comes up, I'll say something.
Wasn't super convenient for Jonathan.
He went out of his way to be there. He didn't just come out with criticism. What are you doing out here? Come on. He came out with an encouragement. He came out with the promises of God spoken over him. And he also said, and I'm going to be here. I'll be with you. I'm going to stand in this with you. But then what are we told? And then he goes back home. He did come out to him, but he also is not constantly nitpicking on him. He removes himself too.
He also went out to David at great risk of his own life.
Sure.
So there was like a willingness to be courageous, to step into a pretty dangerous situation and sacrifice his own well-being in order to go be with David. Because, if he got caught doing that, he probably would have been killed. And so there was his love for David was greater than his concern for himself.
Yeah, that's good.
This is a thought I just had, and maybe no grounding for
Oh,
this.
this is going to be good.
So I think this is an official view of the town church, what I'm about to say. Was it in chapter 22 where it mentions Saul had his spear next to him?
Yeah, he stood under the shade of the tamarisk tree with his spear in his hand.
It seems like every time Saul's spear is mentioned, he's about to do something a little bit crazy.
Yeah.
Whether it's throwing it at David 4 times or Jonathan, or now here, taking out all those priests.
Yeah, and I mentioned this on Sunday. There's a couple ways to look at it, and I think probably both are true here. The spear was the sign of he was the king. I mean, it indicated I'm the king.
A crazy one.
Yeah, but it also indicated, and I'm willing to do whatever I need to with this spear.
Yeah.
So I've got it ready.
Yeah. Okay, well, that was interesting.
So if I see you walk in with a spear someday, Eric, if you come into our office with a spear,
run.
I don't know.
He's a little crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we knew that.
Should we stumble our way through kind of a confusing topic?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's bring some confusion into this because it hasn't been confusing yet.
Okay, so you mentioned this yesterday, but maybe worth some conversation. Saul's killing of all the priests, commanding his servants to do it who didn't, and then Doeg does it. What a dirtbag, by the way.
Doeg?
Yes. However, God is using him to fulfill a promise that he made. And so we have an evil act, and yet God using this evil act to further his plan.
Yeah.
That's hard to wrap my mind around.
That is confusing.
With God's character and his sovereignty and all those pieces. And yet it's something I think we see all through the Bible, not the least of which is the crucifixion of Jesus, God using evil things to bring about his plan. How do we we think about that with the character of God and when we see those things happening in our own lives and around us? I don't know what my question is there, but there's something there.
It's kind of tricky. I mean, we have all heard these kinds of things when hurricanes or natural disasters happen. Someone will always pipe up in some media and say, well, it was God's punishment to the people of X, community because of this. So I don't think we ought to be looking for ways in which God is using, the disastrous things. But there are times where God absolutely brings about a part of his plan through disastrous and hard things. So not to be on the watch for it, not to be hunting those things down, but to recognize that nothing is outside of what God is doing. So nothing is throwing him off his plan.
Well, then I think just going to Scripture and seeing and truly wrestling to believe that God does work all things together for good, for those who love him and have been called according to his purpose, and knowing that there's nothing that can separate us from the love of God. And so when those disasters come, when those hard things come, fighting to believe, God, I know that we're going to see good in this, that because you are a good God, and believing that God is at work, even if we can't see what he's doing or how this could ever be reconciled to be good. And also understanding that we may not see the good of it until the resurrection. And so maybe not having expectation of how God is going to redeem it, knowing that it may be redeemed once Jesus comes back, but resting in knowing that somehow it is going to be good.
There you go. Your non-question had 2 responses. You should ask your final question.
I was forgetting my final question. I was not going to do it. I just blanked it. So thank you for bringing that around.
We need a different host.
No, we don't.
Betty?
Can we imagine a better host than me? I don't know.
I could try it out sometime.
Betty?
Where do you see the glory of God here in these 2 chapters? What raises your affections for our God?
I think for me, seeing the gentleness of God with David. David was in a really hard and scary situation, and David knew what God had said, and he clung to that, and yet God gave him little pieces of encouragement. Like he supernaturally spoke to him telling him to go to the Philistines. And he even brought the priest to tell him, you need to leave this stronghold. And that was for David's protection. And he sent Jonathan to him. And so even though David was in the midst of a really dangerous and scary situation, God was really tender with him and gave him encouragement along the way to keep going.
Yeah, I think for me, I voiced this sort of rhetorical question yesterday that, couldn't God have used only really competent leaders? I phrased it perfect leaders, but we know that doesn't happen. But couldn't God have used some leaders who would have just caused flourishing? But instead, he used flawed leaders. And accomplished his purpose through that. And I, like you said, Kirsten, it shows the grace of God, the mercy of God. It gives a ton of comfort to me to know that while I struggle along, God is still able to use even my weakest pieces to accomplish what he's doing.
I think it's seeing God's counsel for David through his word, just that David sought him and he responded, and maybe it's on the way he wanted and maybe not always on the timing wanted, but God still is providing that wisdom and guidance for David in the midst of everything.
It seems like I say the same thing every week, at least a lot of the weeks. These chapters are messy, like so many of them have been, and yet God is over all of it. I'm convinced of that. And that's a weirdly comforting to me, that even with God using evil, with all the mess in it, he's still over all of it. All of it has gone through his hands, which means when things are really messy today and there's a lot of brokenness, those have gone through his hands too. And I know that he's good, and I know he knows what he's doing, even though I may have no idea. Yeah. That's comforting.
Yeah, it's good.
All right, next week, chapters 24 and 25, I believe. Yes, it is. It's chapters 24 and 25 next week. So please read ahead. And
I'll do that. I'm going to read ahead.
And join us on Sunday.
All right.
Have a great week.